Lesson 7A of the E-Course Safety Analysis in the Process Industry is a description of the TOR or Terms of Reference document prepared for the Process Hazard Analysis or PHA meeting. This can document either a HAZOP or a what-if PHA. The TOR document is a requirement of many of the multinational oil companies in preparation of a PHA. In any event, it is a very useful document for the HAZOP facilitator or process engineer to set out all the relevant details of the HAZOP scope and contains most, if not all, of the following topics shown in the next slide. The following topics are listed in the index of the Terms of Reference document, which is distributed by the HAZOP facilitator to all the participants in good time before the meeting, so that they may make a meaningful contribution to the proceedings. Number 1 is the meeting details, 2, the member details, 3, the project description, which would be the HAZOP introduction, the scope of the HAZOP, the operating modes, the proposed node or nodes, the philosophy documents, mainly the P&IDs. And also, which is quite important, is the MSDS or Material Safety Data Sheet of the product we are handling, because often during the HAZOP we may refer to the MSDS if there are any questions about the toxicity or the dangers of the material being transferred, in this case ULSD or ultra low sulfur diesel. The TOR allows the team to read the scope, study the P&IDs, and follow the nodes which will be described later. Now recall that the HAZOP is not a design review, and while design items may be identified and discussed during the meeting, they are to be noted and marked up on the P&IDs, and they should not take up any HAZOP time. The facilitator will guide this process. In addition, we could have various equipment data sheets showing, for example, the size of a tank, the design, pressures, the operating pressures, temperatures, etc. We move to the next slide. We now examine the TOR index headings in more detail. Number 1, the meeting details, which will be the title of the HAZOP, the place where it will be held, and the date and time. These are important items for the members so that they will know exactly where and when they should be to be part of the HAZOP. Item 2, the team member details. Before the time, the facilitator will get hold of the consultant and find out who the facility engineer will be, the terminal manager, the reliability and integrity engineer, and the operating representative. If there are many instrumented functions in this HAZOP, then the instrumentation engineer will also be invited to the meeting. Item 3, the process description. Here we will discuss the current operation and the proposed operation. Should the HAZOP be a modified of existing plant? If the project is a new design, we will describe the process in this section. Item 4, the HAZOP introduction, is a brief description of the process we will HAZOP. In particular, the study team, by discussion, simulates abnormal behavior in the system by considering deviations and disturbances of the design intent due to causes likely to impact immediate and surrounding plant, resulting in consequences. The study team then decides whether the design has adequate features that can prevent the occurrence or limit the consequential effects. If no safeguards exist, then the team considers what actions are needed to remedy the situation. Item 5 is the HAZOP scope. In other words, a description of the node and the equipment and piping incorporated in this node. We also list what is excluded from the scope, for example, the pumps which are outside of the node. We will also list equipment data sheets which show sizes of tanks, operating temperatures and pressures, etc. We also list the piping instrumentation diagram, the P&IDs, and include copies of these in the TOR. If the HAZOP is a modification of an existing plant, then demolition diagrams will also be included. We list the operating modes in item 6 that the HAZOP will consider. For example, operation during maintenance, startup, shutdown, and commissioning. Item 7 is the proposed node list that will be discussed during the HAZOP. We move to the next slide. We now look at the P&ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Rev 1, which shows the 2 tanks and the ULSD coming in from the jetty and going out to the pumps. Now, the tanks T1 and T2 exist. They have vents, they have overflow protection, and we will not be looking at them in terms of this HAZOP because they would have been HAZOP before as existing tanks. What we will be looking at here, of course, is the TRVs which are being installed, the thermal relief valves. These are set at a certain pressure to protect this section of line, which could be blocked in by this valve and this valve, or other valves in the other lines. What happens here is that if this section of line, which could be very long, we'll only know the length if we look at the isometrics, can in a hot day be overpressured by thermal expansion. If it reaches the design limit of the pipe, it could cause a rupture. So we set the TRV or thermal relief valve at a pressure below the design pressure of the pipe. What happens is if the pressure rises to that 15 bar G pressure, this TRV will open and your ULSD will go up this line through the thermal relief valve, along here, all the way here to the inlet of the tank, and be relieved by either through the vent or there could be a gooseneck vent on the tank. Because there's only a small amount of liquid, it's not of concern in terms of overflowing the tank or any hazard like that. It merely relieves the excess pressure which could cause a rupture. The pressure, once relieved, will drop below the 15 bar G and the valve will close. We have similar TRVs here and here and here, and these relieve those sections of line which can also be closed in during the operation of the valves, inlet and outlet. So that basically is the P&ID. The node itself will be shown by the process engineer and HAZOP facilitator. And as I said, this could be done before the meeting and put into this TOR and then issued. So the participants will know exactly what the node is and what it looks like. Now, if there are a number of nodes, it does save time to do this before the meeting and put it into the terms of reference. If the meeting or the team feel that there are additional nodes required, not in a simple facility like this, but there could be a great many more PNIDs and a great many more facilities that need to be HAZOPed, then obviously we will add nodes. That is basically the scope of the TOR, or term of reference, and that completes this